Hello, everyone. We'll give you a second to get connected. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1174th New Social Environment. I'm Magali, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Stefania Bortolami and Ginevra de Blasio. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Stefania Bortolami was born in Italy in 1965. She studied art history at the University of Torino in 1986. At Sotheby's Institute in London, she attended a postgraduate program in contemporary art. In 1991, she opened a cutting-edge contemporary art gallery in Barcelona, Spain, called the Backspace Gallery. For 17 years, Bortolami has been successfully staging exhibitions representing over 29 internationally renowned artists and participating in at least 5 international art fairs annually. And our host today, Ginevra de Blasio, is a writer and curator from Rome, now based in New York City. She graduated with a BA in art history and visual culture from the University of Exeter and an MA in visual arts administration at NYU. Ginevra had curatorial and work experiences at the Drawing Center, Performa, Fondazione Corsini, 99 Canal, and Paula Cooper Gallery. Currently, she's involved in multiple projects and serves as a research assistant to Adam Weinberg, Director Emeritus of the Whitney Museum of American Art. And with that, I will pass it over to Ginevra to get us started.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for the introduction, and to the Rail for hosting this, and to Stefania for opening up to this conversation with me. And I thought that the most efficient way to start would be chronologically. Also, because Stefania, you have a very interesting, let's say, entering in the art world. And I know that you started studying political science, but then there was a main exhibition that kind of like allowed you to enter the art world. So I was wondering if you were open to speaking a little bit more about this moment in your life.
Yes. First of all, I want to talk about the fact that we're in New York and you have two people with Italian accents doing this talk, which is pretty funny. But yes, this is actually a very European story. I was studying political science in Turin, which is what you study when you don't know what to do in life. It's a little bit like English lit here. It's like, I want to study, but and at the time, my mother lived in Geneva, Switzerland. I went to visit her and walked out of the apartment, walking around the city one day, and there was this museum, Muserat, which was free to get in. So I just walked in. I didn't have any particular interest in art, or I was 19. But yes, art was not part of my life, basically, almost at all. And walked in out of boredom, really, and there were two exhibitions. One was of Ferdinand Hodler, and there are two examples from that exhibition that are actually on the screen right now. Swiss artist. He had a show at the Neue Gallery here, which was amazing. And there's a few works in the Met. And the other one was an Arnold Böcklin show, which is the next slide. If you can turn, yeah. So also in the same room where the Ferdinand Hodler, the Met here, is an example of this painting. So if you're a brooding teenager, either you remember or you have a daughter or son that age, you know that these are the polar existence of being a teenager, this sort of melancholy, thinking about the big questions of life, as exemplified by this painting. And the zest for life and inner force that you can see in the women, this almost caryatides in the earlier slides of the Ferdinand Hodler paintings. So I really felt that the works there talked to me somehow. And I spent a few hours in the museum, and I came out and I decided to switch to art history. It was as serendipitous as that. There was no strategy behind it. Came back, went back to Torino, switched. It's pretty easy in Italy. And also because I just started.
Mhm.
And
Did you feel like you were so drawn to these works that you wanted to deepen your knowledge about them by studying art history, or you just like were really attracted by this like relatability with the work?
I just realized that how I responded to the beauty of the works and the message, and how just looking at the picture you get a feeling, you get what the artist is thinking about, and how it relates to you. And it felt like something that I never experienced before, and I realized how visual I am, and how important and timeless art is, because those images of both artists are really extraordinarily timeless. They can apply to any moment in history. I must say that after the visit, after I switched to art history, I, really fell in love with art. And at the beginning with art history, really rediscovered my Italian origin, and went to visit all the museums, and finally had something that I really loved, and it was an extraordinary feeling. There are times in which I'm particularly happy to have found art, and certainly the moment we're living right now is one of them, because it reminds you all the time that the world is bigger, that it's not just what's happening minute by minute.
Absolutely. And so, following your studies, also in Italy, you started working in the art world, correct? In auction houses.
After I went to London and I did this postgraduate, and then there's some possibility for some students to work at Sotheby's, and that's what I did in different departments. It's pretty great. You jump from department to department. And in one of the departments, which was contemporary art, I met this person who had a gallery in Barcelona, and we got along. At the time, all my friends were artists, so he was like, "Why don't you come to Barcelona and um, I run my space. I'll pay you like very little, but it will be yours." I was 20 something, so I said yes. Um, and I moved to Barcelona without speaking a word of Spanish, but I'm Italian, so at the beginning it was pretty funny. I put an S at the end of every word, and I made people smile because they could
As
see,
we all do.
yes, and people understand what you're saying, and they also understand that you're not speaking Spanish. But eventually I learned Spanish.
And so in Barcelona, you opened a small gallery for 4 years, correct? You
Almost
were doing
4 years, yes. And the concept was very simple, because it was a square, it was one artwork that was like almost installation like per month. And I invited a lot of friends, artists, some of whom are still very active in the art world. The main thing was, of course, the party after the opening. The openings were very well attended. Lots of young people were coming, and the party afterwards. It's Spain in the 90s, so it was just after during and after the Olympics. It was a very booming time for Barcelona. And then I started doing art fairs. And at the time, the main American fair was Chicago, Expo Chicago. There was no Miami, there was nothing in New York. So the gallery that was hosting Backspace also did Chicago. And one time we both went with each with our booth. And as it happens, my little booth was opposite the booth of Anthony Dauphin, which is, at the time was the biggest gallery in Europe. Bigger, I mean, you know, as big as Gagosian and all that. But it was before the mega gallery, but it was at the time as big as Gagosian. In fact, very much representing the same artist. And Anthony and I, we got along very well, and he had a couple of directors that had just left, Sadie Coles and Simon Lee. Sadie was particularly close to artists, and Simon probably also, but the main thing about Simon, apart from being very bright, was that he spoke a lot of languages. And I was also speaking a lot of languages. Grew up speaking Italian and French. And of course, now I also spoke Spanish and English. So I could fill in the language part and you know, a little bit sort of my love for contemporary artists. I was offered a job. It was a junior job, junior director. I forgot what the title was, but I was sharing an office with Anders Kold, who was being now for many years the director of the Louisiana Museum of Art in Denmark, one of the best museums in the world. So yes, we were both juniors at Anthony Dauphin, and that was an incredible experience. A gallery that was incredibly generous with teaching how to be a gallerist. There was a 9 o'clock meeting every morning in which everything was discussed. And especially if you were a junior, you really learned incredible details of how to run a gallery. And when I say everything was discussed, it was literally, should we do a catalog? Yes or no? Should the catalog be hardcover or soft cover? Is the artist too young for a hardcover? You know, who should write for the catalog? That type of discussions. Prices were discussed in detail, how to price things, and that's, you know, it's an important part of being a gallerist. How to, you know, even do you tell where the artist should stay when they visit? You know, there are all these little nuances that were discussed in details, and I never thought about those things, you know, because why would I? So that was really a great art dealer school. And in fact, there are so many people that have galleries right now that went to that school. The Anthony Dauphin.
Also, I mean, it was also a moment in time in which the art world wasn't as saturated. There were many less galleries, and let's say this school must have been very privileged in a way to have this exposure.
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, I didn't realize that before. I thought that when I was offered a job with a proper salary and whatnot, I thought that was me growing up. I'm going to a proper job. I'm cutting my hair, going to get some proper wardrobe because but then it turned out to be a very important part of my life.
And how did you then pass on to the Gagosian school? How did that?
Gagosian is not a sport. Gagosian is a gladiator. Also very important as a rite of passage, but definitely not a school. At Gagosian, you get given, there's no meetings. You get given a a desktop and a desk, and either you swim and create stuff or you sink. But Gagosian was very important for me in other, well, how I went to Gagosian, I was offered a job. Larry was expanding, and you know, he needed people and he needed artists. And I had brought a few good artists to Anthony Dauphin. So someone told him, and you know, we met, and he offered me a lot of an increase in salary. And I remember when I was moving to New York, he happened to be in London, and he said, "Hey, I mean, I'm in London. Do you want to come on my private plane to New York?" And you know, I was like, "I like how these Americans roll. This is fun." Yes, and it has been very fun. It brought me something else. Gagosian, apart from, you know, also learning on the job, Larry is very generous in terms of reward, financial reward if you do your job. And I arrived in this country with basically no money. And after 6 and a bit years at Gagosian, I had enough money to, you know, own an apartment, have an extensive art collection, and open a gallery, buying the space in Chelsea where the gallery first was. So that was pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. I will always be grateful whenever someone tries to tell me something negative about Gagosian. I'm like, look, my experience, tip top.
Mm-hmm. And so despite this, let's say, being in this really pivotal moment in, let's say, in the art market, in the most important maybe gallery, and having this financial, you know, stability and support by Larry, you still decided to open up your own gallery. Like, how did that happen? Like, what was driving you to make this step?
So what happened is that in 2001, before 9/11, Anthony Dauphin decided to close or to retire and close the gallery. So at that point, by chance, one of the long-term employee and very close to Larry, Molly Dent Brocklehurst, was in London. She had moved back to London, and she had a little office, a little Gagosian office in London. And all of a sudden, Anthony decides to close, and Larry moves very quickly, hires another person who is still there, Stefan Bratibor, and together they open a gallery representing all the artists that Anthony was representing, which, you know, Cy Twombly, Richard Serra, the Warhol Foundation, Baselitz, I can't remember all of them now, but, you know, anyone that Ed Ruscha, anyone who was working with Anthony, just at the time was also working with Larry in New York. And they just said, okay, well, then Larry is also in London. And that was really the beginning of the idea of the mega gallery. Because it was not a strategic thing. Oh, let's create a mega gallery. The word did not exist. It really happened, again, very serendipitous. It just happened. And you know, we know that after Larry started doing it and realized what a great formula it is, because you know, you can do shows in different cities of your star artists, and that pays the bills for a long time for that gallery. Other galleries started to do the same, and here we are. So many galleries and so many spaces all over the world. But yeah, that was the beginning. So that was really fun to be there. I you know, was responsible for suggesting a lot of artists to Larry, with artists that would not have said yes to my gallery, but to a gallery like Larry. Was very efficient, glamorous, and pretty sexy. The answer was yes. Sometimes they needed to be convinced a little more, but the answer was basically always yes. So that was incredible. And then I was, about to turn 40, and I was, very high up in the biggest gallery in the world. And I thought that maybe I could do another challenge. So it was really like this. And I opened a gallery with Amalia Dayan. Amalia and I started talking, and we left and opened the gallery.
And did you want this gallery with Amalia to have a different character from Gagosian? Were you thinking about certain, let's say, core values or aesthetics, or an overarching narrative in, the selection of artists or maybe shows? And I'm asking this because I do think that your gallery does have a very, distinct kind of look. These are some pictures from the first show that you did in the current gallery in Tribeca. And it's a really good example of what I'm trying to refer to. That is, the quality of your exhibitions that have always this very strong installational element, very like transformative, and often experiential. So, I don't know if this is, an impression that I have, or it's something that you have consciously thought of, or it just happened.
Well, thank you for the nice words. When Amalia and I left Gagosian in 2005, 2006 to open a gallery, it was a very different art world. And we were both coming from Gagosian. So, first of all, the art world was booming. You could put anything on a wall and it would sell. We came from a very business-oriented framework. So we basically just thought, well, this is going to be great. Amalia is very good with artists, but also very good with collectors. I'm, for lack of a better word, very good with artists. A lot of my friends are artists. So we thought, winning combination, this cannot go wrong. And then life came through, and Amalia got married, and anyway, she, with no problems, without any fight or anything, Amalia left the gallery, and then from 2008, it was just my gallery, just in time for the financial disaster that happened in September 2008. But it is really slowly that my taste came through, and what I really love, because it turns out that unlike at Gagosian, what I really loved was exhibition making and not just making money, or I should say exhibition making over making money. And I feel that it's became more and more focused in that sense. Because not only I have the gallery, but I do a lot of other initiatives that are all about exhibition making. I really feel that exhibitions is the most important role of the gallery. We have to sell the work because the artists need our help and because we need to pay the bills. But the value that an exhibition provides is very, very important. Of course, museums also do exhibitions, and they collect and are the depository of artworks. But as an artist, you need to have the trial of a gallery exhibition before doing a museum exhibition. If you haven't created, several exhibitions in different spaces, how are you going to face a full-blown museum show? You should get into a museum show with a lot of experience and with some tricks up your sleeves, some knowledge. So that's what galleries provide, the possibility of trying different things, of reacting to spaces, telling a story. It's part of our mission as stages, platforms for art. It's not our only mission, as I said. We sell the art, and we also think about the career of artists, try to think, make things happen. But exhibition making really is, I think, top priority.
This is so interesting, and it's so interesting that your first show in this new space was Buren, that in a way he challenges the perception of architecture and the space through these lines. And so it's quite interesting that, for a new space, you showed such a like thought-provoking, let's say, show. So how was that experience? And
Well, Daniel Buren, in his biography, he never once, how you say with artists, such and such lives and worked in New York City or Buenos Aires or whatever. In his biography, he always says Daniel Buren lives and works in situ. And obviously, new space, moving to Tribeca, new territory. There was just one art gallery at the time, Alexander and Monin, and there was Artist Space at 55 Walker. But, I wanted to really make a splash. And Daniel did this amazing exhibition in which he covered he took the patterns of the columns in the space and repeated it like if there was a proliferation of columns. Most of them were not there, but he wanted to underline the existence of columns, which is also the main difference between Tribeca/Soho and Chelsea. No columns in Chelsea, plenty of columns in all the spaces here. So, yeah, I did this fantastic exhibition. You can see it here. First of all, we put stripes in the columns outside of the gallery. So starting on the street. Then I did this installation on the skylights at the back, which are amazing. It was May, so the light was extraordinary and was extraordinary all day long. If you go in the next slide, yeah, so the columns, fake or otherwise not fake, that he did were on one side red, on one side blue, on one side yellow, and on the other side stripes. So when you walked in, you just saw red. When you turned around, you just saw yellow. On one side, you just saw blue. And then when you arrived at the back and you were looking at the skylight and turned around, it was just stripes everywhere. It was pretty amazing. Very sad to see it go, but yes, it was an incredible beginning for the Tribeca space.
would you say that it gave almost like an optical illusion, like almost like an experience for the audience?
Definitely very experiential. And what was super interesting for me is that, in effect, the second show, which right now I can't remember what it was, but the second show was a real discovery of the space. So it afforded the gallery to have two discovery shows, So yes, it was definitely experiential. Everyone who came and saw it. I think that, frankly, this exhibition was one of the many reasons for which Tribeca became Tribeca, because it was really unique. You can only do it in a space like here. The space seemed very generous. People came and loved it. And of course, there was a lot of empty commercial ground floor spaces in Tribeca. It made a lot of sense. And a lot of people that are interested in art living on the floors above, and artists, many artists still living in Tribeca, Soho. It was something that had to happen. So a lot of galleries followed suit, and here we are, very, very happy with lots of foot traffic and a lot of people visiting shows in Tribeca. Were exhilarated.
Because as you were saying, these works are almost like institutional that you would expect in museums. They're not as commercial as works that you would expect to be seen in a gallery space, right? So looking at these pictures or moving on to the next slide with the Virginia Overton installation, what often happens to me when entering in your shows, it's like almost like, wow, who buys this kind of work, which makes it very interesting, to be in the space of a commercial space, let's say. So I know that Virginia, this is actually a very recent show, only of last year, and Virginia here used repurposed old signage from the 60s, if I'm not wrong, right?
Domino Sugar Factory.
And also this show has a very personal tone because of the carpets. I'm wondering if you want to share something more about it.
First of all, I want to say that yes, you convinced me. From now on, only small paintings show. So they become totally crucial. But yes, I do plenty of paintings show. I don't only do this type of installations. So here, Virginia was given a commission from the people that bought the Domino Sugar Factory building. They took down the sign that was very, very old, and they put a new one that is exactly the same, but LED, not neon, and actually works. And she was given a sign to make a commission for the lobby, which she did. And if you have a chance and you find yourself in Brooklyn, you should go see it. It's a beautiful yellow, abstract, very, very large work. But after that, she did the commission. She had a lot of leftover material. So what you see here is the sides of the letters of the sign. So the front is yellow, the back is iron. Just pieces of metal basically, and the sides were these flexible things. And she kept most of the bending. She added some bending in order to cover the back wall of the gallery. And she called it Nude Descending the Staircase, because it really does look like the Duchamp painting. It was very effective. The carpet is a carpet from my home. She needed some color. In these slides, you don't see the rest was also full of metal. She needed some warmth and some color. So one day she came for dinner in my house and she decided that she wanted a carpet. I had to put some holes in it to go around the columns. The carpet is back in my home, so with 2 holes that we patched up again. So all is good.
That's great. Maybe we should look at the other slides to give like a sense of the space. And this shows this is Brennan Green, which is opening a show at Dia Beacon very soon.
Next week.
Next week.
It's a big show of Renee in the 2 naves at Dia. I hope that everyone will have a chance to see it. It's from early works until a recent commission. But yes, that was my first show with Renee, which was recent. It was 2020. We just started working together in 2019.
Mm.
It was a space poem. So you walk through and you could read the poem. And there were two different poems, one on the banners and the other one on the seal screens. It was very colorful, very beautiful experience.
And when you decide on shows like this, with artists, does, let's say, the choice happen together? Do you give them complete freedom, or, certain more curatorial ideas like this one of hanging on the ceiling, for example? Does this happen through a partnership or only through the artist?
Freedom, but also as a gallery, you have to accept it. If someone says, I want to put an upside down swimming pool, you might say no, because it's not possible. So freedom within the limits of the realm of possibilities.
Absolutely. So maybe the next slide, also, I'm sure it has some stories because it looks like a very particular exhibition.
This was in my Chelsea space. It's a show by an artist called Anne-Veronica Janssen, Belgian, in her 60s, very shown in a lot of museums in Europe. And here a little bit, she had a big show at the Nasher, Baltimore Art Museum, and I'm sure some other shows that right now I cannot think of. But we did a show with, in the second room through there was what she calls stars. It's basically a room full of smoke that comes from one of those discotheque machines, to make smoke. And then just simply 6 or 7 lights that point in the same direction, and it becomes like a star. So it really feels like you're walking into a star. And there was on the side of this blue thing was glitter that she had thrown on the floor. Very effective, very beautiful. But on the sides of the glitter, there was a mirror thing with broken mirror that creates also an effect. And it's the first time that I really experienced, it was 2016, but it's still pretty early, really experienced a selfie situation. Between the mirror and the star, I've never seen so many people taking selfies. One of them being Yoko Ono, so that was exciting.
So it was the beginning of the Instagram, let's say.
Not when Instagram started, but it was not that much before that.
Right. Yeah. Probably in the booming years.
2010? When did it start? I don't know.
Instagram, I would say earlier, before 2016 for sure.
Yeah, before 2016 for sure. But it's the first time that I really saw it in full force because it was such a picture perfect show.
Mm-mm. And then on the next slide, we actually have images of the gallery that is upstairs. So I know this space is a bit more, let's say, less formalized and reserved more for particular shows. Like this one of Aki Sasamoto was actually a show that was in Hong Kong at the Parasite space, and then you reinstalled it here. So it's a good example to kind of like frame the way that this space is used.
Well, I talked before about how this gallery really loves exhibition making, and if you have just one space, it can be a little limited. So quickly, when the second floor tenants left, we took it over. At the beginning, half of it was offices. There was a kitchen that was visible, but we started doing little exhibitions. Then eventually we got to the third floor, and the office and the kitchen is on the third floor. So this one just became exhibition space, and it's a full-on gallery where we can do exhibitions. And sometimes are exhibitions of our artists with specific projects, like this one of Aki, or sometimes there are exhibitions of artists that we don't really work with, or group shows. It's really about flexibility. We have another space which we share with Andrew Krebs and Kaufman Repetto, 55 Walker, which was before Artist Space. And that is another possibility of exhibition making. twice a year. We take turns to do shows upstairs. So twice a year, each gallery gets a show, plus we do a collaborative show in the summer.
It's very interesting because you have...
We also have this campus upstate. Well, we'll talk about it afterwards, but yes.
But this gives you so much flexibility in kind of like, partnering the space with many different kinds of artists, I imagine, because many galleries are more limited in one type of artists, like emerging, established, or mid-career, and so on. But like this, you really have the full spectrum, in a way.
That we are always moving into a direction in which a gallery, the old-fashioned, I represent an artist, I kind of own this artist, is slowly fading away, because artists, quite rightly, they want the chance to do whatever they want. So if they are represented by some gallery and they want to do a show here or a dialogue show with another artist here or somewhere else, they just do it. And I feel that that's the right way. I mean, the art world is too globalized and in a way institutionalized. I don't think an artist needs to be owned by any gallery or guided by any gallery. It's so easy to the idea of the artist as staying in the studio and doesn't know what's going on, and therefore the gallery tells them what to do or not to do. It's I don't know, 20th century. It really is. So being a firm believer of that, without, I'm very happy to represent artists, but I'm also very happy any artist that walks in and I like the work and says, hey, I have an idea. I want to curate a show. I want to do something with such, I'm very open and very happy that we have, as a gallery, that flexibility of different spaces in which any idea can happen.
And does it happen often that artists come to you and propose, let's say, other artists, or like really, envision this space as a more experimental one? Or
it happens, but a lot of the time it's us starting the conversation, but otherwise, it has happened, yes. It's a low pressure environment that gives artists the possibility of doing something different that is outside of their galleries show and museum shows. It's not like a toy, but something that they can play with. So beside this space and 55 Walker, for the last 5 years, 10 years, my God, 10 years, I've been doing this program called Artist City, which I believe one of the first projects is the next slide. Oh, no, this is 55 Walker. So this is the space that was artist space. We changed the walls, but the floor is still the same. There's a lot of history, impossible to hang a painting straight. But yes, this was one of the shows at 55 Walker, but it was Madeleine Hollander. It was the lights of the cars that break at the light, which is traffic light, which is on Walker and Broadway.
So it was live, basically. It was connected to the actual lights.
Connected with the city. And whenever the light was red, all the red lights would come up. And whenever the light was green, the red lights would eventually all disappear, and it was just the white lights going forward. It was really great.
Did she identify this as a performance almost, or?
Performance artist, and she has been trying to transform performances into or transform works into self-performing sculptures. Same as Aki, actually. It's a challenge for performance artists. You know, they always have to be there. You know, whereas if you find a way in which your work performs in a non-static way,
Without you, too.
without you and non-static.
Yeah, we should probably speak about this perfectly connects to Artist City, which is this experimental programming in which you pair an artist to an American city, which is something extremely unique. I mean,
Well,
because all of these locations are so under the radar, I would say, right?
yeah, it happened because one of my artists, Barbara Caston, had done a show at the gallery, which had some of her abstract photography, but also a new type of work, which was a projection that moved onto an entire wall. And it worked very well. But after about 3 weeks of the exhibition, she called me up and said, I know what I should have done. And now I feel very annoyed that I cannot do it because in 2 weeks she lives in Chicago. And she was, you know, in her late 70s, early 80s at the time. She's now 88, turning 89 this year. Um, so, you know, and I felt, oh my God, that's what happens, you know, going back to the idea of the gallery as a platform, as a stage. Still, even if we are a gallery and not a museum, you know, the experimentation is usually you turn over the shows in 1 week. So you have 1 week to try things out, and then that's it. Then the show needs to open. And I started to think, well, this happens because real estate in New York is so expensive. You have to have shows. You have to have different possibilities. You have to maximize your real estate footprint. But in the rest of America, real estate costs nothing. So I started to muse about this sort of idea of slow exhibitions, renting places for a year and work with an artist slowly to do an exhibition. Started actually in Miami with Daniel Buren, that was my first one. And this is the second one. So Eric Wesley, that driving through the country, has stopped in just outside of St. Louis. This is, oh my God, this is called Cahokia. And so this class, the first Taco Bells that they were built, Spanish fake architecture. Both Taco Bell and Pizza Hut are owned by this corporation called Yum! Exclamation point. So very American, but they use this architecture, and this was not used as a Taco Bell anymore. So it was sitting there in a strip mall, abandoned. And Eric called me up and said, "Well, you know that thing you've been doing. What do you think about this?" So we did. We rented from Yum this Taco Bell. Never costs a lot to rent these places. It just costs a lot to put electricity and man it and organize it. But very much worth it. And for a year, he kept adding to the exhibitions. He did some paintings that were based on the slice of, like if you sliced a burrito, a cross section of a burrito. And then he did these minimal sculptures, like the one you see on the right, that is the recreation of the windows in the Pizza Hut across the street. So if you look through the window, you see a Pizza Hut, also one of the first ones, and got with very specific corner windows because it's supposed to be like a hut. Never understood why a pizza is a hut, since pizza was born in Naples, nothing to do with a hut. But anyways, it was pretty incredible. We got a lot of museum groups, local museum groups to come to Cahokia. A lot of them had never been because this is just outside of St. Louis in the sort of a poor part of the suburbs of St. Louis. which is another thing that is incredible about America. Yes, the contemporary art world is, New York, Los Angeles, a bit Chicago, a bit Miami, but basically, a little bit San Francisco, but basically this is it. Whereas there are museums in every city. Most cities, there are more than one museum. Kansas City has got 3 great museums. And really, most cities have got several really good museums and very, very active. So these museums have got boards, they got people interested in art. So every time I did one of these projects, I did one in Baltimore, did one in Philadelphia, did one in New Haven. Now I can't think of them all, but every time the local museum were always super, super interested because very rarely there is contemporary art outside of the museums happening. So I always found it very rewarding.
So you would say that it attracts mostly a local audience. Did you have people coming from New York a lot, or it was mainly like local?
Well, New Haven, yes, we had people from New York, but St. Louis, not so much. There were friends of the artists, the very close friends, and some friends, and the very close friends of the gallery, and people that were just curious and thought, oh, maybe why not come to St. Louis? I haven't been in a long time, and took advantage of the occasion for a New York trip. But mainly it's local, and some of them are more successful than others, both as an exhibition and critically and commercially. But each one of them has been an incredible experience. We have this year we're doing one in Wyoming with Brooke Sue. We invited Brooke Sue. Brooke invited her friend Louis Eisner, and we're doing it in Du Bois, Wyoming, in a laundromat, that's really like a hut in this place, which is a couple of hours from Jackson Hole down the mountain.
This is another example.
That didn't happen just because, we didn't pick Wyoming like this, but Brooke is spending time in Wyoming because her boyfriend lives there. And she's spending quite a lot of time. When she's not in New York, she's usually in beautiful Wyoming. Lucky her.
But also this idea of like activating spaces that are unused. It's very interesting. Like this is a great example of would you say this was a previously abandoned space?
Yeah, it was. I mean, this was the Pirelli tire factory it was built in 19. I should have brushed up. I want to say 62, but could have been earlier. By Marcel Breuer as the HQ of the Pirelli tire factory, and it has been sitting in the parking lot of IKEA outside of New Haven for decades, not used. And Tom Burr grew up in New Haven and always, if you know the work of Tom, very much in love with brutalist architecture and with architecture in general. And he always knew about this building. And when I started talking to him about Artist City, he said, well, if you can get the building, I'm in. So it was quite difficult. We got it done. We got the building for $1, and then we spent a lot of money bringing it up to code because they wouldn't let us do anything without bringing it up to code. It's been abandoned for so long. We only used the ground floor, but still. And Tom did a lot of works which were responsive to the works that we had to do to bring it up to code. For example, we needed to put a division, put a division towards, I don't know, sorry, a barricade so that people would not fall into a kind of hole in the floor. And so he did a barricade which had engraved a railing, that's a word, sorry, a railing which had engraved the Jean Genet May Day speech that he did in New Haven as a defense of the Black Panthers. Something that was very high in Tom's mind. What you see on the left is a picture of Jean Genet printed on aluminum. Jean Genet was the spirit of the exhibition. But that railing with the entire May Day speech engraved on it is now part of the Art Institute of Chicago collection. It was really great.
And in terms of unused spaces, I would pass quickly just because we don't have a lot of time to talk about the campus. That is this incredible project that you're doing with many other galleries. It's a collaborative project, so in an unused school. So I was wondering.
This was an Andrew Krebs idea. He came to us, to his friends, Anton Kern, Cory Manzutto, obviously his wife, Chiara Repetto of Kaufman Repetto, and me and Jim Cohen, and said, well, there's this cool 80,000 square feet of building, 26 acres. It's for sale. Let's put an offer. We put a very low offer, which was promptly refused. But then the person discovered that I had to pay some taxes, so decided to accept the offer, and we became the proud owners of the school building, very beautiful, outside of Hudson in Claverack, Philmont, Claverack, 10 minutes from Hudson, built in the early 60s. Yes. Maybe this is 62 and the other one was earlier. Anyway, and we use it as storage, about half of it, and the other half we started doing shows. Last year was the first one. We are now preparing our second one, and we want it to become a yearly big show stop in the itinerary of upstate art exhibitions. We're hoping to be able to have a little bookshop and maybe a cafe, something simple, for when we open in June. The team of Timo Kappeler did the curation last year. He's doing it again this year. We invite artists from not from our program, and some of them, actually we don't invite artists, he invites artists, some of them from our programs of the galleries involved, and some of them from local artists that live in upstate, or artists that he knows or that we know. It's an expanding exercise. Lot of classrooms. So the last year list, there was a lot of dialogues, two artists put together in a room, even if they didn't know each other, and then the juxtaposition was very rewarding.
It's very interesting to notice how, collaboration is a recurring theme in your projects and what you do, and also this idea of activating spaces and communities and places that are uncommon for the New York art world, let's say. I feel like all of these examples, of artist space, of the 50-5 Walker space, and I guess your just like character as a gallerist kind of all fall in the same narrative in a way.
Yeah, the mega galleries are there and are a force, and we are never going to be able to compete with them. But we can do these kind of things that, I remember when there was this deal that Gagosian, Pace, and or Aquavella did together. They were selling an entire collection, and it was got so much press because it was unheard of three galleries like that collaborating on something. Whereas for us, medium-sized, very nimble gallery, we can do it with no ripple, and we have to do it because 1 + 1 becomes 3. In this case, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 becomes hopefully 10 in the long run. Yes, it's something that can give us other spaces, other possibilities. The mega galleries, they create their own other possibilities in different cities, and we don't have it. We're just here in New York.
Thank you, Stefania. I want to give some time for people to ask some questions. So maybe do you want to just like quickly announce your next show that is extremely exciting because Frida was in the past Biennale, Venice Biennale, and had this incredible large monumental scale piece, which no one could have missed because it's in the entrance of the Arsenale. So I'm sure you're very excited to open the show very soon, right?
Yes, it's opening March 14th. She had a slew of institutional shows, but she hasn't had a show in New York since her Venus polling show, which was a few years ago. So let's see. You'll have to come and see. You have to come and visit. I think it's going to be a little bit experiential too.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure.
Thank you both so much. We encourage the audience to ask questions. We have a link in the chat where you can submit your questions. I have a couple questions ready. The first one is, does Bortolami Gallery have any plans for expansion in New York, the United States, Italy, or elsewhere?
No. That's what I was saying, that, not only we're not a mega gallery, but I have no desire. I do not want to be on a plane to go to some exhibition everywhere. So there's certain things, Thomas Dane in London opened a gallery in Naples, and that was a really nice move. It's very close by. London, Naples is an hour flight or an hour and a half. Beautiful city where there were basically a few other galleries. But, I would never see myself opening in Los Angeles or Paris or London. There's too many galleries, they don't need me. And also, if you don't have galleries everywhere, you can, again, co-represent an artist with a European gallery. That's very satisfying, and you bring energy to that artist's career.
And then the next question is slightly related. They want to know what informed your decision to open your gallery in New York and not Spain or Italy.
Well, New York is still absolutely the center of contemporary art. I know that there's been talk of London is the next, Paris is the next, Hong Kong, but no, it's still New York until further notice. Let's see how this president he does not completely kill culture, but still the center of the art world. And I was living here, so it seemed, I had by then I had a daughter who was American and a New Yorker. It would have been strange for me to uproot her and go back to Italy, where I had not lived since when I was 19 years old, basically, or 20.
Thank you for that answer. The next question is from Chloe.
Ginevra and Stefania, this has been so lovely and so nice to listen to. Thank you so much for doing this. My question is, I'm curious if from your own experience, you've had such long and really fascinating collaborations with so many amazing artists, and I wonder how things have changed over the years in terms of supporting an artist across their career. If you can give any input on now versus when you opened the gallery and kind of how things have evolved in your practice as a gallerist. And and how you continue to evolve and support artists in this landscape, which is so distinct. And you've spoken to it a lot throughout this conversation.
Well, there was a moment in which expectations were very different.
Mhm.
When you do an exhibition of an artist of a certain age, an artist that would now be in the 80s, and you sell some works, they thank you for selling the works. And at the time, like a few years back, when you did an exhibition of younger artists, it would be like, why is it not all sold out? So very different expectations with different artists of different generations. I feel like right now the expectations have been tempered for everyone. So besides very few artists that are incredibly successful commercially, everyone else realizes that it's strange times, and therefore every sale should be celebrated, every press article, every success, big or small, should be celebrated. It's working with artists and seeing when the artist's career develops in the right way. It's the biggest joy, and it's very sad when it doesn't. When the gallery and the artists were not able to make it happen.
Thank you for that answer. I'll ask one more just to be selfish. I was at the gallery this weekend and I saw Paul Sapuya's show in the space. It's really, really wonderful. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you should go see it. But one of the things I love about that show is that he used the actual gallery space. And I'm wondering how many artists, I mean, you showed Daniel Buren as well. How many of your artists have done that over the years? It's such an interesting space and it is such a cool opportunity to see an artist respond to it in a show.
Well, Paul asked me to be able to shoot some works in the space, something that, I don't represent that many photographers. In fact, just him and Barbara Caston. And nobody had ever asked me before. He was here during the summer. The gallery was closed for the 1 week that he was here. The gallery was totally closed to the public. And of course, I was very excited to see what would happen. Very, very meta. And the experience, especially if you do come and see the exhibition in the small gallery, there is 4 works that were shot in that small space. And once you recognize it, you really feel part of the photo shoot. Yes, new thing. Very, very open and happy to make it happen. No, but it was the only one that ever asked me.
Thank you. Thank you for today.
Thank you. And thank you, Ginevra, for the great questions. And thank you to the Brooklyn Rail to make this happen. I hope it was not too boring, and I hope it was intelligible with my Italian accent.
Same here about the Italian accent, and thank you, Stefania, and the Brooklyn Rail, Maggie, Chloe, everyone for participating.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Stefania, and thank you, Ginevra. Thank you, Rosenda from Bortolami Gallery for their support and preparing for today's event. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 24 years. A donation directly supports our writers, staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Allison Janae Hamilton and Leandra Lesueur on the event of Celestine at Marianne Boesky Gallery. And as is Rail tradition, you can now all unmute and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you both so much again.
Grazie mille.
Thank you so much,
Thanks for a great
Stefania,
talk.
Ginevra.
So much. A wonderful talk.
Yeah.